On to politics now. Senator Elizabeth Warren is endorsing Brandon Johnson in Chicago's mayoral race. A Democrat from Massachusetts says Johnson understands what it takes to build a stronger Chicago for everyone. She says Johnson has a bold, forward-looking, progressive plan to move Chicago forward. She joins a list of other Democrats in Congress endorsing Johnson, including Danny Davis, Jonathan Jackson, and Jan Schakowsky. Now, earlier this week, Paul Vallas was endorsed by Roderick Sawyer and Willie Wilson. He's also been endorsed by Jesse White and Alderman Walter Burnett. And President Biden and Republicans on Capitol Hill are facing a showdown over the budget. The president unveiled a nearly $7 trillion spending plan yesterday. GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy declined this week to say when his colleagues will produce their own proposal. The House Freedom Caucus announced today they want to slash federal spending for a decade in order to raise the debt ceiling. The White House has said it would not negotiate over that issue, and experts say defaulting on that could harm the economy.
And so joining us now with insight on those topics and a lot more is WGN political analyst Paul Lisner.
As soon as she said, let's turn to politics, I flew over.
You knew that was your cue.
You made it just in
Right.
time. You made it just in time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start with the Chicago mayor's race. And we've been talking an awful lot about the endorsements leading up to the runoff. Which ones stand out to you? And I understand you've got a line on some new ones coming on Monday.
Yes. So as far as which ones matter, look, Chicago, we're very local here. We like Chicago people, Illinois people. So I think that when either of these candidates get somebody like a Jesse White or, you know, some of the names yet to be heard from, Chuy Garcia, Lori Lightfoot, I think that will make a difference for people. I think when you bring in the national names like Elizabeth Warren, that may influence some people, but they're almost beyond the city. So they get to say, yes, I'm progressive like you and you're like me. That may influence some, but I just don't think that the impact is as significant as people think. So if I were these candidates, I would be getting a lot of the local politicians that people have just voted for that matter to them to vote. Sure. I can report now that on Tuesday morning, this got moved on Tuesday morning, there will be a group of Northwest area of Chicago aldermen who are going to come out for Paul Vallas. And that includes Alderman Nick Sposato and others from that realm of the city. So a lot of firefighters up there.
You did well in those wards.
Very much so. And so the aldermen are about to, they're just getting some last details together. But Tuesday morning, there will be an announcement.
And I would think when it's a block that large, because you're saying it's not just one alderman, it's a block of them that will be endorsing that individual.
That's correct.
Will make a big difference.
And that's the current plan. And, you know, look, I mean, the bottom line is, as I said on the election night, Chicago has an identity crisis going on now because you couldn't get much more progressive for mayor than Brandon Johnson, and you can't get too much more conservative than a Paul Vallas in terms of the programs they want to bring to the city. So as you see each of them lining up people sort of within those realms, that's one thing. I mean, what I'm saying is the Northwest alderman might fall in line with a bit more conservative view for Vallas. What's important, too, is for each of them to bring in folks from the other part of the spectrum to show that they, too, will represent and work for all Chicago, which they both say they will.
Since we talked the mayor's race, let's talk about the presidential race in 2024. You've got Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, they were in Iowa. Does their appearance sort of push Biden to make an announcement here?
As an incumbent, no. Look, the average date that people announce for president typically is April 16th. And so there are some statistics to show that those who announce earlier than that, how many of them go on to be president, it's not a significant number. April 16th is sort of the magic day. And Biden has, not by law or rule, it just is what it is. And Biden has sort of said he's got to get through a lot of things before he makes any announcement. So it makes sense that we go into April before that. Anybody that's going to Iowa, anybody that tells you they're not running for president but they're hanging around Iowa, what are you going to Iowa for if you're not running for president? So clearly Nikki Haley already is. Ron DeSantis, it's been reported that he is telling close confidants he is running. He's not ready to say it, but that decision has been made. So it's just a matter of time. He's, of course, on a book tour. I don't think it's about selling books. No. Well, not completely about selling books.
Indirectly. So Donald Trump facing the real possibility of an indictment over Stormy Daniels and the hush money here. How is that New York case going to affect the former president as he continues his run back for the White House?
No, Ray, this is really fascinating. Here I'm kind of wearing both my legal and political hats when I address that. First of all the cases that are brewing out there, for this to be the one that comes forward with a potential indictment, and I have to say, just having worked with Department of Justice, the odds are there will be an indictment here. They don't do what they're doing in terms of inviting Trump to testify. New York has a special rule at that state level that says if they're going to indict you, they invite you in. And typically you do not go. And I don't think Trump is going to go in and testify. But he's invited to do so. So it could be after that expected period of time that we see an indictment, more likely than not. The fact that it's the Stormy Daniels situation that's coming ahead, first of all, a lot of people would say, oh, it's an easy one to prove. No, it's not. It gets complicated. It involves some campaign finance issues, which Donald Trump can basically say, no, it had nothing to do with that. I was really trying to protect this information from Melania. It was a very personal thing that married men might understand. I mean, that will probably be the kind of approach he takes. But the bottom line is that it really doesn't matter what your motivation is if you use money intended for a campaign for a different purpose. That is problematic, and that seems to be what happened here. But I don't think whether Georgia acts or DOJ, Main Justice and all that, I just don't think we're going to see anybody move as fast as New York now all of a sudden seems to be moving. But from the political aspect, Trump supporters will hang with them on that because there's talk about witch hunt, talk about nobody cares. This is just not an issue. His supporters will, I think, be behind him more so than ever if that's the matter that goes forward.
I had about 3 more questions here.
Go for it.
I can't get to them. No, we want to talk about what you've got in the show this weekend.
Well, we do want to talk about that because, we try and spend some of these weekends looking at the contested races, the runoffs that are coming up. And so the 46th ward, that's James Kappelman, who has retired.
Yeah.
So right now, 6 candidates down to 2. Kim Waltz, who's worked for Quigley and has that sort of bend to her, and Angela Clay, who is a very, very progressive candidate. They're going to meet each other on the show, well, separately on the show. We'll also do a Springfield review because Springfield was doing stuff this week. So we're going to catch viewers up on what's going on there, and that's Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. Turn the clock. Remember, we lose an hour, so don't go, oh my goodness, I forgot to do that. I missed the show. Lourdes, I will call you to make sure you've changed your clock.
Thank you, sir.
Whatever it takes.
Thank you. I always answer, too. Thank you.